Today we're going to talk about is the wireless guest. As you see here, I have my two APs and a controller onboarded into the DNAC. What I'm going to do is to how to design network setting. Under wireless, I'll create a wireless SSID called CLAB guest. Let's open up. In here, I make a name that's called CLAB guest. It will automatically generate the CLAB guest profile name. In here, I chose 2.4 gigahertz. For L2 security, I use open. L3 security, I use web policy. In here, authentication server, I use central web authentication. And will be self-registered. And I just use original URL. For AAA configuration, I use my ICE that is already integrated with my DNAC. I keep everything default. After save it, I also created, I did not create a network profile. I keep using CLAB staff to edit it. I add my CLAB guest and I use Fabric. Save that. It automatically inherited from my global setting. In here, I set up in the global, and only in the global you can create your SSID. Under the test area for 5 fabric site, then I can see my CLAB guest network right here. And what I'm gonna do is to have the provision, and I'll show you the VN I created for the guest. Here is the virtual network. It's called guest, and I have a guest pool 172.16.30.0/24, and it's a wireless pool. This pool I created just under my site. I'll show you very soon later. Here, on the IP pool, I will carve out or reserve a guest pool. I use my default DHCP DNS server, which is connected to my Fusion router. I inherited from the overlay pool. It's a large pool, and gateway is we call it 172.16.30.254. With all that set up, I go to provision, fabric site. The first thing I'm gonna do, inventory, I do a provision. Provisioning my controller. With it configured, I provision my EPs as well. Because I create a new virtual network guest, in here I'll provision my border edge as well. In this provisioning, DNAC will automatically create the guest VN and Lisp connection. So with all that provisioned, I'm gonna hover over to activity and the tasks. I'm seeing all that being provisioning in progress. The good news here, I'm seeing all my provisioning tasks have been complete. So I'll go. So for the security SGT, I'll go to my policy on a group-based access control. Click policies, security groups. Find my guest. I have my guest SGT associated with VN guest. That'll be all set till we go to provisioning, fabric sites. On my fabric, click my controller and make it as wireless LAN controller in the fabric. Click deploy. In here, my controller has become a fabric controller. Go over to host onboarding and double check virtual network on the guest. I have a guest pool and it is also a wireless pool. For that, I'll go to wireless SSID and see that guest. I'll make it a guest address pool associated with the guest SGT. For CLAB staff, then I'll use my pool in the CLAB VN. Click deploy. So now let's go to my controller and the WLAN. What I can see is two WLANs are up status, and if I go to the policy, I can see the DNAC has created two policies. Let's double check my guest, CLAB guest profile. Over to advanced. On the fabric profile, see it's associated with the CLAB guest profile. It is a fabric profile. Let's double check what it is. It tells the controller what's L2 VNID 8202 and SGD tag is 6. So now I will go to my edge 1 and show VLAN brief. I can tell 8202 is associated with the VLAN 1041 and is with my name, IP pool name guest. And now what we're going to do is to go to the border 1 and I will show run as VF define. What I can tell is DNAC has created a VIF called guest for the guest virtual network. And the RD is 4101. And we're going to show run as BGP. Here we can see is DNAC has created another BGP via F, the guest, and is populating the network between the border and the controller is 172.16.10.8, and my guest IP pool 172.16.30.0. With that provisioning, I also, in the DNAC, under the border 1, I did a L3 handoff for the VN guest, and this will automatically pick the IP in the network 172.16.10.10 and remote AS will be 1000. A use update source VLAN 3003 is also automatically picked up. So show run interface VLAN 303. What I can tell is this VLAN interface is associated with a virtual VIF and give it itself an IP in /30. These all the config can be added manually, or you could do it on the DNAC automatically. But to redo the L3 handoff, you have to take out the border from the fabric and add it back as a fabric with L3 handoff again. So I recommend you to add it manually into the border and resync with the DNAC. Before I go ahead with the fusion router, I want to explain how the VF leaking for the gas work. In here at my diagram, I have a virtual network guest with a SGT guest. 172.16.30.0/24 is the wireless guest IP pool. With the wireless client connecting to the AP, it is the access tunnel. If I go through the edge, I will be able to see that access tunnel. Here's my access tunnel between the edge and AP. It tells me where's the RLOC, which is the self edge 1, and AP address. And what is this destination port? 4789 is VXLAN UDP port. Without that, the AP will connect it to the edge. The edge will send the traffic from the wireless client to the border. The border in this case will have BGP, eBGP neighbor with my fusion router. The fusion router has a subnet to the DHCP and DNS server. In this way, this subnet will be leaked to the BGP from the global routing table. And also I do have an internet. The BGP will always originate a default route to my fabric from the border. And it's just one way leaking. I will also leak this guest IP subnet from the BGP VRF from the Fusion's perspective back to the global routing table. So whenever the client is requesting IP in the guest virtual network, the DHCP relay will able to reply the packet back to the fabric to the client. So is two-way leaking is what I'm gonna do next. The first thing I'm gonna do, I define, hover over to my Fusion. I first define VRF, kind of guest. And I'll say RD 14101. The address of the IPv4 route target unicast IPv4 unicast exports. It will be 14101. If your warning was 4101, you go to the border. (4101) is the RD for the guest. Route target import, that's 14101. The next thing I'm going to do, I will define IP prefix list. We'll call it guest. I will mark my DHCP subnet. Sorry, I'll mark my virtual network guest subnet, which is 172.16.30.0/24. I will define another prefix list. It will be global prefix for route map. Global map permitting match this prefix list global prefix list. Add a route map with guest map also I'm gonna match my guest prefix list. So show run IP prefix list I've defined in guest prefix and global prefix, and I also going to make a static route for the fusion itself, pointing to the ISP. I'll make it global. Is defined for version F guest show run as IP route. I have defined a IP route for VIF guest to the internet. Is a default route. Show run as route map. The route map global is matching global prefix, and the route map guest is matching the prefix to guest. So the next thing I will do, I'll create a BGP 1000 and address family IPv4 global. I'll make a network. I'll populate this DHCP subnet to the DHCP server. Address family IPv4 for VIF guest. I'll say neighbor, my border IP, email is 100, neighbor, this is 3.3003, neighbor, I'll make active, and also to this neighbor, I'm going to generate a default route. Very interesting, curious to know what's the interface G3 to 3303 sub interface. I make DOR1 queue to match 3003 VLAN, and I posting forwarding IP route table guest. So now let's show IP, BGP, VP, the border. The border has a config to the fusion is interface VLAN 3003 is assigned to the guest virtual VIF. For now, I'm going to do one thing is to leak the router between the global and the guest. So VIF define guest address IPv4. I will import IPv4 unicast map will be global. In case I did do some typo, I shall run as route map import IPv4 unicast map. I first import global map, global route table, and when I export IPv4 unicast map, I export my routes from the guest to the global. With all that, I show IP routes VIF guest. What I can see is I have default route I received guest virtual network IP pool for the guest, wireless guest, 172.16.30.0/24. And I have a route to the DHCP DNS server. That means all the clients will be able to reach out to the DNS DHCP server from the fabric. But how the DHCP DNS server respond back to the fabric network? So that's my export route. So IP routes global. In global route table, I can see this guest virtual network subnet has been leaked into the global route table. So from the global route table, my DHCP DNS server were able to know how to reach to the fabric guest. Guys, here on my clients is connecting to the CLAB guest. And if I try to ping the internet IP, it's not allowed and blocked some way. What I'm gonna do is go to my controller and in the controller I want to find out what's happening, what is policy applied to my client. Let I find my client on the general security information. I can find there's a URL redirect ACL defined. For exactly what is a URL redirect ACL, I'll go typing ACL. We easily find out this policy. ACL is denying all my access to the important services, only permitting the HTTP port. So with only HTTP allowed, I'll be able to open the web page. I'm trying to open the web page and it shows me sign on page. And I have already defined this self-register portal when I do some pre-config network setting in the DNAC. So I go ahead with the sign in. I'll go register, test 1, user 1, test 1, user 1, clab.com. I copy my username, password 0334. Go ahead, sign on, accept, and it is successfully signed on and able to open a web page. With that, can I ping the internet? Yes, it's working. And how it going to reach the internet IP? I do a trace. The trace route information shows me it first reached out to its Anycast gateway, then it went to the Fusion,